So who is Rae Sloane? You've probably heard a little bit about her, and I think she's one of the most important Imperial characters up and coming in the new story and are effectively known as the new canon, or otherwise known as canon. Rae Sloane is an important Imperial figure. She's been featured in a lot of the new books, and I'm going to talk about who she is, why she's important, kind of some of her character aspects, and spoiler warning because I'm going to talk about the books. So if you don't want to be spoiled, you may want to leave. But we're going to talk about the first thing is she is not Ciena Ree. Ciena Ree is a character from the Lost Stars, and that is a great book, by the way. But because the two characters do appear to have some similarities, I want to dispel right away that Ciena Ree is a completely different character from a completely different story, and their similarities kind of stop with, at the end of Jakku, because Ciena Ree was all in command of the Inflictor, and while they are both Imperial officers, they are very different paths, and they have different character qualities, although they do share some of them in common. All right, so we first see Rae Sloane show up in A New Dawn. This was her first appearance. She is the acting commander of the Star Destroyer Ultimatum. Now, she's acting commander because their commander is off doing somewhere else, so she is very much in an uneasy position here. You see that basically she is a good officer, but she's got aspirations. She has goals. She's very goal-oriented in this book, where we first kind of see her. She's very much has attention to detail, and she's very duty-bound and very serious. That's probably one of her biggest qualities, is she's extremely serious, and she takes her job and her career very seriously. She's very smart, and she's not one of these buffoons that you see in the Empire. She definitely was somebody who was destined to do good things and, to excel through the ranks. During the story, she, cooperates with Count Vidian, who's the main antagonist, who has this plan to harvest a moon for this Thorlide, which is a material the Empire needs. But he eventually decides that he wants to blow up the moon and destroy all of the Thorlide, and she is credited with stopping his plan and saving this moon and saving a lot of material for the Empire. Granted, the story takes place with Kanan and Hera from the Rebels crew, and Kanan actually had an awful lot to do with that. But as far as the Emperor is concerned, Sloane is the one that gets all the credit. He's not going to give any credit to the rebels. But so as a result of this, Sloane is promoted to the full commander of the Ultimatum. So she is now in charge of a Star Destroyer. I believe she's 30 years old in this, so she's pretty young to be commanding an entire Star Destroyer. But her career is off to a great start. After this book comes out, we were given some other glimpses into her through various comic books and short stories. She has some more run-ins with Kanan because, she does have interactions with Kanan periodically. He's, kind of a smart aleck to her. And, she's not a big fan of his, but he becomes something of a hobby of hers to try to hunt down. We also see that some short stories into her foiling an assassination attempt on Vader and the Emperor earlier in her career. So we're basically, she's showing up in more and more stories. But her story really picks up right around the Battle of Endor. She is a vice admiral by this time, and she's basically in charge of the Star Destroyer Vigilance. And at the end of the Battle of Endor, she's the highest ranking officer that survives. She's basically able to regroup the force and keep any resemblance of organization going on in the midst of total chaos. Her story takes a little pause right there until the Aftermath trilogy begins. At the beginning of Aftermath, she is now a Grand Admiral, and she is in charge of the Super Star Destroyer Ravager. And Aftermath basically starts this summit on the planet Akiva, where all of the top remaining Imperial people who all want power and who all have a say, they're having a summit, and they're going to decide what to do with the Empire and officially put somebody in charge, and she's one of the leading candidates for it. And we also are introduced to Gallius Rax, who is kind of the puppeteer behind the strings. She's working with him, although she definitely has insight to know that there's something not right about this guy. But he's kind of pulling the strings, and at least for the moment, she kind of goes along with it, which proves to be one of her biggest weaknesses, is that she, doesn't have the foresight enough to stop this guy before it's too late. Well, what ends up happening, it brings us to Life Debt, the second book in the Aftermath trilogy. Basically, Gallius Rax decides that she's going to be in charge of the Empire, and or at least the figurehead. He wants her to be the face of the Empire. She gets sent to Trandrilla because she's starting to doubt him, and she's starting to challenge him. She's starting to challenge Gallius Rax. So he sends her to Trandrilla over the guise of having a peace talks with the New Republic, or they still call it the Rebellion, but it's peace talks with the New Republic. But what she doesn't know is that during the course of these peace talks, there is going to be an attack on Trandrilla. So a whole bunch of basically sleeper agents that are at Trandrilla attack, and it looks like this entire peace talk was a setup. Mon Mothma is wounded. We even see the assassination of Crix Maydeen during these peace talks, and who is right there in the middle of it is Rae Sloane. She gets blamed for it. Now, Sloane is not the type of person to do assassinations. She is an honor-bound officer. She's a ideal officer, and while she is still kind of a bad guy, she's not a mustache-twirling villain. She's not at all. She's a very honorable adversary, is probably the better word. She's somebody you would face in battle and respect them. She's not somebody to stoop to these means, but she gets blamed for it. And through the end of this book and the start of the next, she becomes the bad guy that you're actually rooting for, which is a really cool place to be, because you're not really supposed to root for the Empire unless it's Thrawn. In case I always root for Thrawn because I love Thrawn. But which takes us to Empire's End. So Sloane is able to escape Trandrilla, even though people are hunting her down. She is with Nora Wexley's husband. Nora Wexley is, one of the stars of the Aftermath books. She is a really great pilot, and she's the mother of Snap Wexley, who is in Force Awakens, but I won't go too far into that. The reason being, though, is Nora Wexley's husband was one of these sleeper agents, and so they kind of escaped together. And, he kind of talks some sense into her a little bit about the rebellion, not enough to convert her to being a good guy, but at least that she understands that they're not what the propaganda says they are. But she's still bound to her empire, which has kind of been stolen from her. See, Gallius Rax thinks she's gone, and she is sneaking back in there because she knows that he set her up, and she wants revenge. So she flies to Jakku. She gets to Jakku, and she's got to go through a lot of steps, but the idea is she knows that Gallius Rax was going to assemble all the Empire at Jakku. She goes there to try to kill him. She wants to reclaim her empire. She was the Grand Admiral. She was the face of the Empire. She was in charge of everything, at least on paper, and she's going to take it back. And Gallius Rax stands in her way. So basically, she gets there. She has to sneak around, and what happens is she ends up confronting Gallius Rax and killing him. At the same time, the Battle of Jakku is happening. And she kills him, and she takes his place in this plan that he had. And basically, the plan is to have the Empire die, and everybody who's picked to kind of start the First Order escapes on the Emperor's yacht to the unknown regions. And that's kind of where her story ends for right now. She has taken Gallius Rax's place, and she's been through a lot, because Jakku can kind of drive you crazy. But at least before suffering so much and going through all these challenges on Jakku that she goes through in the book, she's went from being a duty-bound, career-oriented, honorable adversary of an officer in the Imperial Navy to being driven by rage and revenge. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next for Sloane. But she's very serious. She's so serious. She never settled down, had a family. She never never really laughs or has a sense of humor at all. But she's extremely dangerous and very serious. So what happens is she ends up, leaving, and she's probably becomes one of the founding members of the First Order. And so it's going to be really interesting to see if she shows up in episode 8. If she is even mentioned, or if she's still alive. She would be significantly older, but she was young enough that she could still be alive. I mean, she's about the same age as most of our, she's probably younger than Han Solo is in Return of the Jedi, and he was still alive, in episode 7. So she could still be alive in the First Order and be kind of maybe on a council, or maybe she's retired and maybe she'll get mentioned. Maybe there's a ship named after her. But if you want to find out some more about what's going on during the timeline with the founding of the First Order, check out my Thrawn video. If you want to find out a little bit more about what I think is the real reason and meaning behind Snoke, check out my Snoke video. And I've got plenty more videos here. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think about Sloane, and have a wonderful day.